Kicking up dust, spinning tires, it's a dirt track show. Lenses focused, inches rolling, fame with that adrenaline. Capture moments, freeze frames, that's where
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is a cold, snowy, off-season edition of the Woah Show, and joining us today, I'm very excited, the new boss of Stateline Speedway. Bill, how's it going?
It's going great, Dan. It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me. It was actually really awesome to spend some time with you a few weeks ago when I was up at the track, and appreciate you having me on.
It's always special to be able to walk through the gates at Stateline, especially since I've taken over the photographer roles and, kind of making myself known around there. It's been for sale, and the future's always been uncertain. So any time to go up there, even during the off season, and it's really weird. If anybody has ever seen the place when it's that empty, it's kind of weird knowing how many people are there during a regular Saturday night. And it's good. Hey, you know what? I'm gonna put this out there because we're all dealing with the weather up here. You want to tell everybody what the weather is down in your neck of the woods?
Yeah, I might not make any friends over that, but yeah, it's a warm and balmy 59 Orlando today. I'm sitting in actually Oakland, Florida, which is a little bit northwest of Orlando, and this is my favorite weather. If it was 59 every day all year, I'd be happy. So we live in Orlando, full time, but there's only about 2 or 3 months where it's nice, and I'm as happy as can be.
It's shorts weather around here is 59.
Right.
So, all right, let's talk Stateline. It's like I said, it was really good to finally have kind of some answers for the future. The Scots were trying to sell it for quite some time. Like I said, about when I first started showing up around these parts, as I say, it's kind of been uncertain. And every year, it feels like at the last race of the year, we always take a couple extra times sitting in the pits, enjoying, sitting in the press booth, with all the people that you work with, being like, all right, who knows what we're going to see? And then the news broke that you came along and purchased it. And my first question is, so why Stateline? Why pick up a racetrack like Stateline? And if anybody knows the phrase, I like to say this all the time, is when people start making comments on Facebook is, every racetrack's for sale at any given night if the money's there, right? Because that's how kind of the racing industry right now is. So first, when you're making the purchase of Stateline, why pick up this track? What are your ties to it, and kind of a little bit of the background? I know that your previous ownership, but coming back to it, and why does it hold a special place to you?
Yeah, great question. So for me, I'll share this with you. Okay, this is special. So I'm sitting in my home office. That's the side of one of my ARCA cars, gas can. Then there's this. Okay, I got this in 1984, and this was given to me. That was the year Fritz and Lynn Siemens bought the truck, and I was 8. And they passed those out at the mall show. I'm pretty sure it was 84. It might have been 80. But it was right around when they took the track over. So I grew up, it starts with, I spent my childhood there watching my dad race and helping my dad. And, then my grandfather owned cars going back to 2. So for me, it's really special. When I look at a lot of the things I have that I've been able to achieve in business, I go back to, where did I learn work ethic? I learned it, working on a race car till 1 a.m. I think about, just everything. The root of a lot of my work ethic and kind of who I am comes from my earliest days living at racetracks. I mean, we raced Saturday, Sunday for 20 years straight. I don't think my dad didn't miss a race. And I started racing at Erie's actually first in 1993, and then finally had the opportunity to race at Stateline in the limited lates. So, I mean, that's really the root of who I am. And, 2014, 2015, we made a play to buy the track. It was up, for sale, and it was caught up in some legal issues with the estate. And we couldn't, a lot of people don't know that. We couldn't have bought it if we wanted to. It needed to go through a lot of legal matters before we could actually buy it. Notably, franchise taxes weren't paid for 20 years. So by the time the attorneys got all that sorted out, was going through a divorce and had already spread myself way too thin because I was trying to buy 5 tracks, which wasn't really that smart. And I just put myself in a bad spot. So For me, it's been 10 years since that happened. That was a huge wound for me. That's the only business failure and it was a massive failure because it happened on a stage that meant so much.
Yeah, and seeing someone that does know how much this place does mean in the area is good to have around. So when making the purchase in such a, I wouldn't say maybe I would say a unique time. I wouldn't say it's a very fragile
Yeah.
time in this area. It's going through a lot of different kind of, you know, there's a lot of transition. There's a couple tracks changing hands this year, notably with like Genesee Speedway is another one, or the dirt track at Genesee. They rebranded up there. And I always say we live in a very funky area, right?
Yeah.
Notably, it's late model country. Everybody that's ever been around here knows it's late model country. But really, if you go up north, it's big blocks, and you go down south, it's, sprint cars, and you go up Midwest, it's modifieds, and, a whole bunch of craziness. And we kind of meet in this, this middle. And I know we had conversations about this, kind of looking, what is our identity, and kind of looking at the future of Stateline. What do you find could potentially be the identity of Stateline? Like, so it's kind of been the guiding light in the region, since I've been here. Anytime you go to a different track, locally within about an hour and a half, it's always, well, Stateline does it this way, and Stateline has the most cars, and Stateline has the most fans, and oh my God, did you see what happened at Stateline? How do we continue this? How do we keep moving into the future and really kind of the identity of this place going forward under your ownership? What are you planning?
I mean, when you think about, first of all, why, right? Why am I doing this now? This isn't the best time in the world, right? For really anything. I mean, a lot of people know I have a tech business, and tech went through a pretty tough couple of years with interest rates. The more interest rates go up, harder it is to get venture capital and private equity financing for a tech. And that's why you saw a lot of tech companies crash, in the stock market and then build back up a little bit. So I've kind of weathered that. The timing for my business was really good. It put me in a position from a liquidity standpoint to buy the track. So that was the first thing. Is it took me 10 years to rebuild back from 2014. And it was miraculous timing. I mean, I saw the track for sale in August. I didn't plan to buy it in July, I can tell you that. But when I saw it was for sale, and the timing of recent financing, it put me in a place where, it was another opportunity to do what I'm very confident I can do, which is make that track even more successful. Notice I didn't say make it successful. It's already very successful. Scotts and the Turners did a hell of a job. They have an amazing product. You look at what Mark Matthews did with parts. I was having a conversation with a kart racer earlier today, and you look at that kart count on a bad night, it's 130. It can be upwards of 160 or 7. And I'm going to just call it, because of that kart track, we've been able to grow car count at Stateline while a lot of tracks are flat and declining. So the product on the big track is awesome. There's always ways to improve, but it's really good. But I know what my superpowers are. My superpowers are I can put fans in seats. I did it before. We had 8,000 fans there when we opened the track on July 5th, 2014. And I believe very strongly in a business model that not many people are trying. It's a risky model in some ways, but in other ways, it actually is less risky. And that is when you have a facility like Stateline, you can't just run 10 races a year and expect it to be financially. You have to run some races. So, Dan, the thing that you're going to see and why the timing I feel is good is the product has never been better at Stateline in terms of the product. Now we just need to apply the marketing. We need to apply getting series like the All-Stars in Stateline, which they just relaunched, which is super exciting. Getting the mod series, getting ULMS. And in the future, if we can do a great job with some of those series, maybe we'll have an opportunity to host an Outlaws or a Lucas race. But we have to earn it. And getting the big blocks back on that. Stateline, and you just said it, sits in a unique place, right? It's sort of equidistant from Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Cleveland. And there's a lot of different types of racing that happen in those areas. We're a crossroads track. And, with 69 years of operating history and the fact that we sit between those, again, modifieds to the Midwest, big blocks to the north and the south, sprint cars to the west and the south, super lates, we are we are the epicenter of superlates. So that's what gets me excited. And, I was at the Bills game this last weekend. Go Bills, hell of a victory. Marv Levy, they always, when they have the legend of the game, they always provide a quote from Marv Levy. And this week, it was Doug Flutie. And he said, one of Marv's famous quotes, when it's too tough for them, it's just right for us. And I believe, no different than starting a tech company now 3 times during 3 recessions, I love going into a difficult situation. And I just see it as opportunity. And I really hope some of the other tracks can think a little more broadly about how do you make it an entertainment facility? How do you make it almost a year-round facility? Because that's kind of what you do if you want to be around in 20 years.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that because there's this weird thing happening right now in at least with the late models, maybe a little bit in sprint cars. It's kind of hard to say because my only knowledge of sprint car racing is really, Pennsylvania, where those guys don't have to leave the porch to make a living with sprint car racing because it's so healthy down there. But
Right.
at the late model racing and the national scene, dirt track racing is more popular than ever, right? And it hasn't quite translated down to the local levels, whether it's, the cost of getting in or maybe, I always say that everybody that I meet since I moved to Jamestown, because I'm originally from Olean, I used to make this drive every Saturday for years until I finally moved out here. Everybody I've met here that's not really a racing fan always has a story about that one time they go to Stateline, but then they don't come back. How do we get them to come back? Is it, there's all these questions that I think are these unique situations that we're in for racing, and maybe there isn't, quite a connection of trying to get to the national scene to get down to the local scene and what brings fans to the track. Is it saying we're paying $10,000, or is it just word of mouth saying, oh, this is the best entertainment you can find locally? I guess you brought up the marketing side. What are kind of some things that you're maybe looking to do here in the next year, couple of years? I see the mall show you guys created an event on mall show, which is always one of my favorite things because it's everybody in one place and you finally get to talk to everybody after not seeing them all winter. And that's always a big one, right? They're kind of like a tradition around here. But, mall show, what else to get people in the seat and go, wow, we got to bring our friends, and what are you targeting and what kind of things can we expect?
Well, what makes any business successful? It's culture. Yeah, if you have a shitty culture, you're gonna have a fairly shitty business. You have to have a culture where employees want to come to work every day. They're excited. Maybe they're not whistling on their way to work and skipping, but at least they feel good about being there. They want to be there. They can be anywhere they want. Right? It's the same thing with fans and drivers. And I'll ask you, Dan, if you don't mind, in an interview, turn it back around just for a second, and then I'll go back to your question. What made you had a first time you came to Stateline? What made you come back a second time?
I just there's so much history, and as someone that just loves the history of the sport, I think everything is built on what happened the week before. Racing is always, look at these points battle. Oh, these guys are the legends of the sport. And then you have all these stories that, again, based on history, what happened last week, the underdog. You don't become an underdog because you won every week the last couple weeks. It's the stories and the people behind it. And when I first got started and, no one knew who I was other than, for the longest time, our Facebook page, everybody used like, who is this guy? And then I would show up to racetracks and go, oh, you're the Wonelli guy. And now I can't escape it. There's all the stories, and whether or not the action on the track is good or bad each week, there's stories to be told each week. And I think that's the most exciting part about whether we're doing photos or whether we're putting together races, the kind of drama you can have in a race. And I don't know if that's something that, might be lost in the current day because everybody's attention spans might be a little less. I think this is something that we can really say is a lot of younger, including my generation, our attention spans are a lot shorter. So trying to keep them entertained and marketing those stories, it's just, there's just so many good stories in our area that, make you want to keep doing it.
Yeah, that's great to hear. What kind of moved you, and so the stories, the history, the feeling you get that you have is the key. It's how you feel. It's how it makes people feel. That's what makes them come. So for you, you embrace the history, the legend of Stateline, the fact that you have like almost 70 years of stories that have been told. It's like a soap opera that doesn't end, right? It just keeps rolling and people keep tuning in. And that's a beautiful thing. But what about that family that's never heard of Stateline? Believe it or not, that exists too. So what I want to do is reach, and we have to especially reach these younger fans, right? So we're designing a schedule. I gotta tell you, I never put this much time into a schedule. I've developed, what different types of schedules, whether it be business or racing back when we had the track and we're operating it last time. We have put a lot of strategy into it, looking at when all the other tracks are racing, looking at regions, looking at the types of cars we can mesh together. And we put a lot of time to try to build a really good on-track product that I call it the theory of bourbon chicken. You're probably wondering where Bill is on crack tonight. If you go to the mall, they offer you free bourbon chicken on a toothpick, right? It's true. They make you want to buy the bourbon chicken by giving you a trial of bourbon chicken. And if we can get more people from all over the tri-state area to come to State diehards, but also get some new families, that it's something to do. And Dan, the biggest thing that holds Stateline back is the fans that when they're thinking how to spend a Saturday night and they've got 4 or 5 things they're thinking of doing, when they don't think of Stateline, that's where we have to be in the mix. And right now, I don't think Stateline's in the mix as good as it could be. So the types of things we're going to be doing, it's marketing partnerships. We're working on some pretty key partnerships right now that are going to help us build fan base. Honestly, it's advertising more aggressively. It's price promotions and promotions around how we bundle family packs and things like that. So it's really making Stateline relevant to the family that wants to do something on a Saturday night for less than $100. That's what we have. We have to be in considerations, is what they call it. And if you're not in that, like if you're going to go to dinner, you're probably thinking of 3 or 4 places. If you're not in those 3 or 4, it's hard to break through.
It's definitely a way to see, because I've always said that there's 100 options, and we talk about this with every track that I've worked with. There's 100 options out there, and 50 of them you can stay home and sit on the couch and whether it's watching racing on the couch or watching something else or there's so many options, and definitely trying to get them the place back into their mind, and and how we do that is definitely pretty unique, because racing isn't the most popular thing anymore, right? It's not the early 2000s where everybody, it was like crazy when I first got into the sport and watching it with my grandfather on TV and watching NASCAR, and they were building these massive racetracks to fit all these people that most of those guys were going to their weekend short tracks. I remember going to Chapel Hill, the asphalt go-kart track that my grandfather helped out, and it was a WKA Nationals, and there's hundreds of carts coming in. We used to have this mecca of racing, and I would still say we still do from time to time. There's always some great highlights and people that come out of this area that are some of the best to ever do it. But definitely getting those fans to see what we have to offer, and then continuing to try to get them to stay locked in. We always talk about the dog days of summer. August is always a really rough time for most tracks, because I always say like June, July is when everybody starts to really not want to ever race ever again, because their shit's torn up. They're trying to fight their buddies from the beginning of the year because they doored them one too many times. And the fans are like, oh man, I've gone to the racetrack 16 times this year. I got to go do something else. I guess when it comes around to that time, and I always like to ask this question to a lot of different people, what do you see yourself trying to bring in during those kinds of, how do you plan to mix it up? You guys got different series coming in during, I think the end, doing a show in the fall, and then bringing the ULMS in July. Sorry, there's so many schedules. I've been talking to so many people about when they're racing, so it's hard to keep track. But and then our series. But what else? Say you have the Dream Stateline season.
Yeah.
What are you putting where? What kind of promotions? Kind of some ideas from you.
I'm happy
You
to
don't have
give
to promise anybody anything, but if you had to pick a couple things to add.
like I say opening night, and I'm happy to give a little call to Woah Nelly exclusive treat of State Line's 2025.
Hey everybody, Woah Nelly from the future here. As you can tell, I'm wearing something completely different. This Caden Bush, Carpy's Print Company original hoodie, and the Woah Nelly hat. And it's also daytime, so that's how you know it's a little bit different. We just want to make sure we thank our 2024 partners for the season and everything they do for us. Without them, we don't get to do all this amazing stuff that we get to do, whether it's promoting races, covering racing all over. They make it a lot easier for us, and helping them out, whether we give them photos or whatever we can do for them to also keep the cycle going, to make sure we are always giving back while they are giving back to us, if that makes sense. Anyways, let's start with our premium sponsors. First off, Carpy's Print Company, the best damn print company in the land. They make our awesome checks for all of our races. Every single time they make a new check for us, it's always the best one since the last one. Those guys are amazing. Also, they make the best hats. They fit. Even the beanies, they fit my big head. If you got a big head like me and you don't like a beanie that sweatbands, not just to promote my own stuff, these things don't do that. But they also make some of the best hoodies. They always are. I always say fat guy friendly. They're a little bit bigger, a lot cozier. If Carpus doesn't do it, you don't need it. Close Racing Supply also was our headlining sponsor for the 5th anniversary Woah Nelly race at McKean County Raceway. They provide parts from all over the country from the leading manufacturers of dirt racing parts. So if you need to pick up one of those or some of their original parts, they fabricate stuff in their shop too. And it's the best. It's some of the best stuff you can get in the region. Not even just the region, nationally. If you look at some of their posts and see who's winning with their stuff and some of their customers, man, it's a who's who of using Close Racing Supply. So if you're looking to improve your game in 2025, make sure you stop by either their store in Eldred, or you can shop them online and get it shipped. So you can just do it from the comfort of your home. Great Lakes Speed Shop is your podcast sponsor for 2024. They present this particular show right here. And also, they were a secondary sponsor to our races. Bud and the gang make sure you are going fast, whether it's a modified late model or what have you. Bud will get you going in the right direction for the 2025 season. Check them out. Martin Dynamics is your premier source for suspension components. If you see a guy up front, it's probably a Martin Dynamics guy. These guys have it figured out. Suspension is the most important part of the game today. So make sure you go check out Martin Dynamics. They're some of the greatest people that we get to work with. And man, those guys over there, geniuses. I have no idea. We don't race cars here. We just make them look fast. But we know how important suspension is. It's probably the most important part of any race car currently today. And Dumb Mountain 106.3, our marketing partner, they helped us out with doing some stuff for the Smithport McKean County deal. Without them, we wouldn't be able to get more butts in seats and reach an entire demographic that we wouldn't be able to. So if you're looking to get your business promote or product or brand out in front of some people, make sure you go check out The Mountain today and what they can do for you. And let's go get back to that conversation.
We're going to open on 19th of April, and I've had some people say that's too early. I don't know. I mean, I went back and looked at weather patterns. Haven't changed that much, and there's actually more precipitation in May than April from what I saw. So we're going to give it a shot. The 19th of April, we're going to have a 10,000 to win super late unsanctioned race the next week before most of the other tracks won't be open yet. So it'll give fans and drivers a chance to come to Stateline and hopefully watch a great show. So we're going to kick it off with kind of a bang with a big super late race the second week. We're excited to have the Bill Law Memorial again with Rush. Vicky Emig is an amazing partner. She's been really helpful to us, and I think we're being helpful to her as well by welcoming the Rush And I've heard nothing but excitement. I mean, I'm hearing about a bunch of cars being built. We're going to have modified madness. Are we comfortable talking about that?
Oh yeah, you could. Hey, you could drop whatever. We already announced our date.
So Dan, yeah, I'm excited to partner with you with our Modified Madness night, a Woah UMP race, as well as the EMOD Madness Tour. They're going to be there. So I'm excited to see how you promote a race because I have a lot of confidence in you and your passion for what you do, and that shows in everything you do. So we're excited about that night. Looking down through, we're going to have the big blocks on the 14th of June. So we're excited to have them. A lot of people from Buffalo and Niagara Frontier region and Western Pennsylvania should be interested in that. And then I'll just, big weekend, the 4th of July. Can't give a ton of details yet, but we do have the ULMS race and we may have a special surprise in addition to that. So stay tuned on the 4th of July weekend. Lernerville and Mercer are both on. So we're looking to put on a pretty big weekend. And, you said it, you start getting into the later part of the season, and I'm looking at my schedule right now, and I have a column that says competitive. So it doesn't have other racetrack names when I'm looking at those dates. Chautauqua County Fair, Cattaraugus County Fair, Gary Rodeo, Cattaraugus Fair, Warren County Fair, Erie County Fair, Erie County Fair. That's every week. So not only are people running a little thin on cash and patience, there's a lot of competition for an entertainment. So we're going to be bringing in a second rush touring race the 9th of August. Vicky's been averaging 47.8 rush crate late models per race. So what are we doing? We're reaching outside of this immediate region and we're bringing cars in. We are going to have a pretty high dollar challenger race, believe it or not, 2nd of August, which we're excited to announce. Those guys should have a good time with that. We are going to have a pretty big pro stock race in that window too. So we're working on, some strategies. We have our Pepsi Fan Appreciation Night that we'll do late July. We'd like to align that with the fair season and really get, work on a lower cost to get to the track because we know everybody's at that time of the year, it does become a little tough if you're going to 10 races or 12 races. We have a lot going on later in the season. Then we're bringing back the Fall Brawl. That's something that we launched in 2014. It went away and we landed a ULMS race as well as a ULMS modified race for that weekend, the 12th and 13th. And then we're looking at possibly running something we're going to call Oktoberfest Invitation, the first week of October. You look at the temperatures in September and October, and there has been a bit of a shift there. Our weather's amazing, really into mid-October. So it's going to be obviously weather permitting, just like any other race. It's not going to be a 2-day show. It'll be a 1-day show. And then we may end this with an enduro. We're still trying to decide if we want to do that or not. I love enduros. I ran one at Stateline. I think I started 160th or 100. It was ridiculous, but it was some of the most fun. So that's the top to bottom. And I will say, we're going to be announcing an all-star race. We did land an all-star race. We haven't nailed the date down yet. We have a few options that we're working on, but I'm really gracious that, they're giving us the opportunity to host them. And that should be some great racing when they come and visit with us.
I will say, hearing all this, very excited. And I do agree with the early starts and the late season stuff too is one thing that a lot of tracks around here, it either seems like they start early and end early, or they start late and then end late. Places like Outlaw Speedway, shout out to those guys out there. I always like making the trip out to the Finger Lakes to see some big block racing when I get the chance. Phenomenal late model track for the guys that haven't traveled out there that far. When they host a couple, I think they have 1 or 2 super shows a year, and they have a crate late model race out there. One of my favorite places to go that isn't home, the home turf, and their announcer Craig Simmons, Spazman, gonna get some hate for this maybe in the comments. Whoever listens to this far, dude's awesome. He's so awesome in victory lane other than being in the way, but it's all right, dude. It's cool. Seeing the big blocks come back our way, that's really cool. I think a lot of people will be very excited to see something different on the track. Not to say that what we've done in the past hasn't worked, but I think there's going to be a lot of value in seeing, a new track for these guys, how they're going to handle it and make adjustments because, maybe some of these guys haven't quite seen a track like Stateline before. Sprint cars coming back, that's always a really good night. To kind of go through that, everybody gets really, really excited around here when you say open wheel racing. And I guess another question that just popped into my mind here is, so you're opening it up to bring in a more series, whether it be the Econo Madness Tour. I always get it wrong. That Alex is amazing. His Gary, who runs it, also runs in the series. Great people. I love working with them when I can. And seeing all these different classes come in and the excitement, opening the door to these series. What kind of is your kind of idea to letting more series in? Because there's like two ways of thinking. People really hate series and people really love series.
That's a good point, because everybody doesn't love series. I can remember when I was a kid and the Empire Super Sprints came. I thought that was the coolest thing I ever saw in my life. And my dad hated it. He's like, cars are annoying, they have to push them. Like, and I'm like, I love these things. Like, these guys are absolutely crazy. Like, I love them. I love crazy. So here's how I look at it. If we can, let's just take the big block. If we can get that fan to come from North Tonawanda, who goes to Ransomville every week, to make the pilgrimage down to Stateline on a Saturday night, and we can get that fan down around Mercer and Butler to say, hey, I'm going to go to State. And they like it. And that's what we have to execute. We have to do a great job. It's how you feel. Right? How do you feel when you go to the track? What makes you feel good? If we can make fans feel really great about whether it's a driver or a fan, but let's just focus on the fan, and they see that we're having a fall brawl and they're not doing anything that weekend, or maybe they're not doing anything during our fair season, and they love to watch the Rush Crate Lates too. I have a feeling we can get 1, 2, 3 events out of this. And that's how you make money in this business. I mean, we are doing this to make money. We're not doing this is a passion project. Yes, everybody knows that I make some decisions that are always business driven because I love this track so much. But at the end of the day, it does have to pay the bills, right? And when I think about it, it's that incrementality of, you sampled it, it's bourbon chicken, you liked it, you bought it, and you're going to come back 1 or 2 more. And then when we announce the schedule next year, we're going to evaluate what worked. How was our fan count on Big Block Night, BRP cars? Was it good or bad? Did they like it? We're trying to do some exit polling as well, just to understand if fans are happy. I don't think anybody ever asks fans. So we want to understand if they're happy, and if they're not happy, why they're not happy. And then wash, what do they say? Lather, rinse, repeat. And that's kind of the plan. And when you look at the schedule, these are, like I said, these are geographical pockets where we're trying to pull people in from. And then, as you said, there's some people that don't like series. So what we're trying to do is balance this, where we're not washing the weekly program. And so what I'm doing, for example, we have 20 points events this year. So we have 20 we've been doing 8 to 10, the last few years at State. So we're going to 20. We're doubling the number of races. But there's some strategic nights where we're going to do a rotation. I'm going to just give an example. If we have, let's say the Rush Crates are at Genesee Speedway, we may give them off that weekend and bring in the big ones. So we're not trying to add, stack beyond our weekly program. The key is rotation, I think. And the key is being smart about it. When do you rotate? What are the right classes to rotate and why? So that's really where the work has been, is trying to architect a schedule, that's going to preserve the weekly racing integrity while letting the series come through. And we'll see how it goes. I mean, there's no guarantees, but we think we have a good recipe for creating a very exciting 2025.
I think the buzz when you guys announced the ULMS return to Stateline was pretty intense, especially, 10,000 to win, big show. The last time we had, or last year, or this last season that just happened, when they had the big 10,000 to win show and they marketed and, they pushed and had all those people in the stands. Hopefully we'll be able to do that again. That was really cool. I mean, I got there super early. I mean, I got my special photographer parking, as everybody says. They're like, oh, this guy thinks he's so cool. He gets to park all up close. But seeing all the cars all the way up the road parked on the side, seeing that many people and seeing them almost break their record. I think the actual record was the World of Outlaw show, one of the first or second years they did it with the Scots. And it was like by a handful of people. It was so cool to see that place like that. Hopefully these events bring it back, and then hopefully those guys keep coming back. Before we get out of here, I think we had some great conversations. We're going to try to do something new here before, I usually say that this show has no structure. We're going to try to add some structure. We're going to ask you 5 questions at the end, kind of like your little exit interview here. Just the first thing that comes to your mind. You can either expand on it or not. But 5 questions. I'm going to ask everybody this through the winter and see if everybody likes it or hates it or they tell me never to do it again. All right. Your first question is, who is your favorite race car driver ever?
Oh, man, that's hard. That's a really hard question, but I'm going to do my best. I mean, obviously my dad, right? My dad was my hero growing up, him racing. He'll always have a special place. I'm an Ernie Irvan fan. And when I ran the track in 2014, I actually had Ernie come and speak at the banquet with his son, which was pretty cool. And the reason I like Ernie, I liked him before he had basically a very tragic injury, 2 tragic injuries that technically died on one of them. But the fact that he came back, fought, and won after that was very special. And I was already an Ernie fan, but that kind of cemented him for me. He was a little bit ruthless, but he turned that around too. He had bad behavior, even worse than Ernie. And then he turned that around. So Ernie Irvan is somebody who fought challenges, overcame them, and I think that's inspiration.
What is your favorite racetrack and you can't pick Stateline?
I know. That's easy. Salem. I love Salem. 36-degree banking. That pancake side of that car is from Salem. We got 9th in the ARCA race there. And I love that racetrack. I love super high banks. I like being an inch off the wall. That's unequivocally Salem is my favorite racetrack.
What's your favorite racing moment?
I'm going to say it was honestly probably that race that car got wrecked. We passed damn near every car on the track. We lost our ignition on the second lap out of 200 laps. And I actually was in the hospital that week for 5 days. I was hospitalized earlier in that week. And the doctor told me I was insane to go race a 200-lap race at Salem, 90-degree weather. But I did. And we had horrible luck at the beginning. We qualified 13th or 14th. The car lost the ignition on lap 2 or 3. I came down pit road, lost a lap or 2. We passed every car but the top 2. I mean, we were on a rail. And that was, for me, being a self-funded ARCA team against teams that are running $1 to $2 million budgets. I bought a whole team for $25,000. I had a great guy running it, Jack Dudkowitz out of Buffalo. So anyway, that for me, that was an ultimate underdog moment for me to compete against some of those guys. A lot of them are racing cup now and actually be in the top 10 after being in the hospital all week. That's probably one of my greater moments.
Crazy.
That meant more to me than running Daytona in 2015.
Okay, yeah. So to comment on that is, so I can only imagine, right? Because I do all this iRacing stuff, and I'm sure it's nothing like it. But I always, that kind of place kind of reminds me of Port Royal, and Mason Lobb always said it best. He goes, "You just have a lot of time to think about what you're gonna do when you hit the corners." Is it kind of like that? You're just sitting there like, "Okay, I'm gonna have to turn soon."
Are you talking about Daytona?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I wasn't even supposed to run it. We finished 16th in the ARCA points, so we had a provisional, and everybody wanted to buy our provision because there's 40, 50 cars. And I didn't have a speedway. And I swear to God, it was a Tuesday night, a few days before Daytona. I got a phone call. "Hey, Bill, you want to run our car?" That was the first person that called that said, "Do you want to run the car?" I said, "Hell yeah, I want to run your car." "Who are you?" I didn't even ask who they were. Like, "Yeah, I'll run your car." So I ran that race literally to get my hauler out of winterized mode. I had to go get fitted I actually got fitted for the seat at the track in the garage area. Ricky Knapp flew down from Rochester and fit me in the car. And Dave Moody from MRN came over and he looked in. He said, "You're not getting out of there, are you?" I'm like, "Nope." I was in there about as tight as I could be because it wasn't my car. I ran somebody else's car for the first. So my car is pretty modified. I'm a pretty big guy. So run those cars, it's a lot of work for me to get it fit. So I missed the whole first day of practice and then went out there and ran. And we did all right. We made the show and ended up 27th on the lead lap. But it was probably the most boring race I ever ran. It was, we didn't have a good engine. And so you're sort of you're behind the 8 ball at that point. We couldn't really suck up because we were underpowered. But, obviously, just the moment of racing at Daytona is overwhelming, especially when you grew up, running dirt. That's a pretty big move. And I'm not done doing it. That's something, once things settle down a little with my day job, that's something hopefully I'll be healthy enough to do and I'm young enough to still do. So, but it was amazing. And yeah, you do wait forever for that turn. And the thing that a lot of people don't realize is how narrow Daytona is. Daytona is not a wide track. Talladega is a wide track. Daytona is not a wide track. So it was pretty surprising to me how narrow it was on corner and shit.
All right, and now this one is more specific than the favorite moment one, but what is the, like, if you could pinpoint the one thing that got you hooked as a fan of racing? Like when you go, oh my God, I gotta do, like, either you're sitting in the stands and you're like, oh my God, I gotta do this, or oh my God, this is gonna be, this is.
Did I have a choice? You have to realize, I grew up at the racetrack. When I say I grew up at the racetrack, I grew up at the racetracks. I honestly don't think I can answer because there was never a moment in my life that I didn't, ever. Like there was no moment where I had to make a decision. It was just something I would do. So I hate that I spoiled that one a little bit, but there was no decision. It was always, do I do it when I'm 16 or 17? Because in those days, you didn't do it when you were 12, right? If I could have done it when I was 12, I was big enough when I was 12. But in those days, the early 90s, you started when you were 15 or 16 at earliest. So I started when I was 17.
All right, last question. This is going to be more of a throwback, but if you could bring back one thing in racing that you've seen since you've started, there's one thing that you're like, this is my favorite thing, and I can't believe we don't do it anymore. And I know my buddy Caleb, who I'm gonna shout out, would be like, say wedge cars, because man, he loves wedge cars. This is kind of like if you could throw back to one thing, one car style, or anything that you've seen, what would it be?
I love the Superbirds, like the early 70s Superbirds and stuff. They were amazing. Wing. Those cars were designed. I would have loved to have at least watched one of those races. They're pretty amazing. But I'll tell you, and this may or may, so that's what I would bring back. But the thing that's insane, just absolutely insane, is what the Indy cars were like in the 50s and 60s. Because when the 1960s, they got fast. And there was no safety. Like, it was just what it really took to drive those cars. I don't think anybody realizes what it really is. Like, and even the NASCAR cars, you look at like the K number 71, it's on display over somewhere. They floated around. How you hit the wall with that car, that's going to hurt. Like, we have so much safety in these cars. It's unbelievable how safe these cars are compared to those cars. So those guys were warriors, man. I'm not saying the guys today aren't, but it's different. It's a lot different. Imagine racing at Indianapolis with a like, or driving Talladega in one of those Super Bs with a bus seat. So with that, huge shout out to Jim Scott, because prior to me racing in ARCA, I believe he was the last person to race in ARCA, and he did very well. He had some top runs and raced against some legends like Benny Parsons, and he drove those cars that did the same. He told me about a 500 lap race that he ran at Salem, and the power stay. I can't even. It's a whole different.
He definitely has seen racing really become what it is. He talks, you watch old videos, them talking about rollerball, going uphill, down across the bridge. They're like, it's not even a racetrack at this point. It's just you're trying to survive. And, you just think about how far it's come. That's really what like I said, how much I love the history of this area. Those kind of things are crazy to me. Where we have come from to where we are now. So, Bill, any last comments before we wrap this up?
Well, I just, again, want to thank you. Again, we need to create more Dan Nelligans. You showed up. You didn't grow up around the track. Boy, you sure you like what you're doing, and I can tell. And we need more people to have the passion, for not just, again, this isn't about keeping the lights on. We're not playing to keep the lights on. We're playing to grow. We're playing to. It's the only thing I know how to do. I don't like things being the same. And I'm excited about the challenge. I really am. And I'm really grateful to, be able to have a Whoa Nelly night. We're excited about having our Modified Madness night, and just can't thank you enough for what you're doing for the sport. because that's very, very important. Reminds me a little bit of another guy who did a lot for the sport, Jay Pease. Jay is somebody in my first tech company, him and I worked together. I brought him in to be the senior editor of racefan.com. And him and I had a special relationship. And he was somebody who gave anything he could possibly give to the sport. So you remind me a little bit of Jay.
That means a ton to me because Jay is an absolute legend of this area. You know, he kept track of things you could only wish you kept track of. He could the Rolodex of information that was lost as a photographer, one of the best, you know, and it's so sad that we lost such a great mind and, you know, person in the sport, because imagine just the history that was lost with him, you know, that just things like I can't imagine being that quick with things. You know, I wish I could be that. And, you know, and sometimes people say that about me, where they're like, how did you remember? They're like, how are you? You know, I'm taking photos and I'm paying attention to the race, doing my thing. And they're like, how did you like take photos and pay attention to what happened? I'm like, you just do the thing, you know? But he's definitely one that, you know, there'll never be another one like him. And we'll always be playing catch up from a journalist and historian perspective around these parts. And we're very lucky to live in this era of everything being available at our fingertips. However, he had so much information that isn't, you know, available right away. And it does mean a lot that you know, that kind of comparison. However, I believe I got a long way to go. You know, about 50 years worth of information to store in my brain first.
You're where Jay was in the mid 70s. Just think of it that way. And Jay, I don't know if you know, he was in Mensa. You know what Mensa is? It's an organization. You have to have a certain IQ to be in Mensa. It's for super high functioning people. He was a Mensa member. I don't know how many people really know that, but he was. And I almost killed him. And I didn't mean it. It was the worst moment I ever had in my racing career. My dad let me drive his car when I started running limited late. And I ran Stateline and he ran Erie's. And he gave me his big engine, the 434. And it was opening night, 1998. I'll tell you the date. It was April 20th. I was on the pole or off the pole. No, I wasn't. I was starting back a little. Anyway, I drove that car in probably 20 miles an hour faster than I should have because I wasn't used to that much engine. I ran over Terry up. I think it was Kurt Uplinger, number 22. I ran that car over, ripped the carburetor, ripped the valve cover off. Brand new car. The gauge panel was dented. That's how hard I hit that car. And my car was like this when I went over Uplinger, and Jay was running from me as I was doing it. I actually got a picture, and I'm going to send it to you. And if you want to post it with this show, Jay to this day said that was one of the scariest moments of his career because he just didn't expect me to come into the corner. And I wasn't used to that kind of horsepower. So yeah, I literally was depressed for weeks after what I did. It was horrible. Anyway, JP's a very special person.
If you check out our new logo, it's the most recent Woah 25 check. I don't keep all the checks. I usually make one. The Woah 25 is the original Woah race. It's my baby. We put the most effort into it. And this is our original one. And over on the other wall, we have a quarter panel from Jason Knowles when he ran the Dome. We sponsored him when he went out there. And then under that is the Rich Michael one this year at Freedom with the new logo is me running away from a car. That's how we went viral because of it, because Kyle Bedell came through the infield. So I've never seen people wreck at Stateline like this in my entire life. It's the only time I've ever seen it since I was a fan, photographer, whatever. And Jason Jenko and Kyle Bedell were racing down the front stretch, and they're beating each other up pretty good. And all of a sudden, you know, Kyle Bedell gets sideways, and I'm like, oh, he's all the way over there. And like I see his tire, I can read Hoosier. Like they're stopped, and he's still moving. And I'm like, well, I better get moving. And everybody kept making fun of me for still to this day about how I'm the fastest photographer in the East. But yeah, that was man.
So you know,
I didn't know Jay was running away.
Well, I'm glad you know what it's like to run from a car. It's definitely it has to be scary. I haven't done it. I've been on the other side. It was a lot easier for me than for Jay and for you. So you can relate for that.
I will say at Stateline, because it's just the berm, there's no tractor tires or anything anymore. It's just you and God out there that's making the decisions. Because I mean, like, cars come through the infield all the time, but like Kyle was coming in hot. Like he didn't stop till he hit like it was really like the grass was really wet that night, and he hit the other side of the track, and he finally stopped, and he went over, and I go, this is because that was the first time he tried to kill me. And then there was another, and then at Freedom, he threw a rock off of his car that took off, hit the brim of my hat and flew it out. I'm like, he's kept trying to kill me. I think Kyle Bedell has tried to kill me multiple times. My first time at Stateline, he flipped over the berm almost at my feet. So
you have experience with this. So
just him, just Kyle Bedell, dude. He's probably listening and laughing right now.
He made it personal.
But all right, Bill, we got to wrap this up. I got some Woah Nelly Night in America iRacing to do, and hopefully this will drop sooner than later. Hopefully quicker the better, because I know a lot of people will be wanting to hear from you. Unfortunately, we had that drivers meeting canceled, and we will see you on the 15th in person.
Yes, looking forward to it, and looking forward to kind of getting the season kicked off soon. So thank you again, Dan. Thanks for all you do, and we'll see you soon.
We'll be seeing you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.